everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. For those of you who don't have your headphones on, now's a good time because you're not going to be able to hear me. And you can't see me, like I'm this omnipotent voice from the front, nice and short. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Robin Sutara. I'm the field CDO at Databricks, and I have the distinct pleasure of moderating today's panel to share a little bit with you the story about ASDA. I am going to sit so that I'm sort of level with the panelists, so I apologize already to those of you in the back that you can't see us because we're down on the floor. But hopefully you'll still get some benefit and value out of the conversation. So maybe let's start with introductions. Miriam, we'll start with you.
Hi there everybody, so I'm Miriam Cunliffe and I am a Senior Data Product Manager at ASDA, so I look after a team of product managers and also data analysts. We work with our business areas to just manage our roadmap for data products and drive that through to delivery.
Perfect. Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex Meakin. I am Senior Director for Data Strategy and Delivery at ASDA, and I look after, I suppose, everything from the sort of business engagement and data partnering through to delivery, data product builds, data governance, our reporting, and also some areas of kind of privacy and making sure that data is of the right quality for the organisation.
So I'm sure everybody in the room is familiar with ASDA as an organization. What they might not be as familiar with is the transformation and sort of where you started and where we've gotten to. So Alex, maybe you could give a little bit of context for the audience on why ASDA sort of started this transformation at the very beginning of your journey.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's probably two things to share with the group. I think first is the why. Which is ASDA was historically owned by Walmart, and over the course of the last few years, that ownership moved back into the UK, and so there was a lot of system change in order to make sure that we operate independently. I think the second kind of point to talk about is probably the scale. And it's hard to articulate if you're not in the middle of it, but we have changed every single system that runs a £25 billion business whilst still operating the business, and that is everything from how we do our financial accounting to the people systems to run our HR processes, to the tills in the shops, to how we run the depots, shops, everything that you can never imagine has been changed over the course of the last few years, and that obviously presents an interesting scale problem from a data perspective. That the typical journey is integrate one new system, and putting SAP in most organisations is large. That is one of 8 work streams that we've been working on, but trying to get that volume in and get it into the business to deliver value at a very quick pace is an interesting problem statement.
I think that's the interesting part, I think, about ASDA really was that complexity and the speed at which you had to contractually meet these obligations to make sure that was happening while not impacting right, all of us shop at ASDA at some point, so you couldn't impact our experience or how you were actually delivering the business. What were some of those early learnings or sort of issues as you approached this complex problem of the size and scale that you had to? What were some of the early things that you, almost now in hindsight, wish you had thought about or considered at the beginning of your journey?
I think probably the key learning is around focus and being intentional, especially when you're operating at that scale. There were enormous programs, so there were 8 programs running in parallel, and it's being kind of clear on what is it that you're trying to achieve, both in line with the outcomes of the transformation, aligned with the overall strategy for the business, but also making sure that you are kind of very focused on what really matters when. I think what happened in the sort of early days is everyone kind of sits around and thinks about what is it that I need in order to run the business of the future. And I think what we sort of learned through that is that A generates a very long list, And I think that the second is that when you are transforming at the scale that you are, that actually people don't know what they want, because it is new systems that people have never used. It's new data that people haven't seen before. It is new business processes, it's change curves, and often what you think you need is really just a reflection of what was in the world before transformation. I think we started off on a sort of journey of saying, tell me everything. I think what we quickly learned was that actually the real key is around people, really, and it's about the relationship and the journey more than it is about, can you write all your requirements down?
Now, Miriam, a lot of your work was sort of helping Alex execute against sort of that transformation and getting that narrow scope. Could you maybe give the audience a perspective on how you've approached how you've approached the business and creating that sort of capability?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really difficult, it's a difficult journey, and one of the things in bringing focus is always hard, because bringing focus usually means making your list smaller, and it usually means leaving some things that you care about or somebody cares about behind. So I think rather than just go out with the kind of painful messages of you have to choose some things to leave behind, which is never a good way to start a relationship, let's face facts, is we actually started by building the relationship and putting our end users and our people first and really at the heart of it. The other thing that we did do is we started small, and we generated almost like an interest in the change. Changing a whole entire organisation while they're already going through a change program is not the easiest thing to do. So what we did was we worked with one team. We worked with a team who were changing early, who had quite a lot of things to worry about, particularly from their data, and they knew they needed the data to be able to basically do their change well. So we started working with them. We did really simple things. We co-located with them. We took ourselves to them. We sort of stopped being sort of like a slightly scary technology team that sits in a different part of the building who you only speak to every now and again. And we went with them and we spoke to them regularly. We spoke to them every week, sometimes every day, and we involved them in the process. And we didn't just wait until we had something good to show them. We showed them regularly, and I think those are some of the keys: is build a relationship, build some trust, but also show what you're doing as you're doing it. And that's the good things. It's also when you have a bump and where it maybe doesn't go as well, and then you get some goodwill, you get some trust. The prioritization and the value comes after that, but it really built a bit of a wave of change where other departments then said, oh, I would like a data person. I would like somebody to talk to about my data and work with like that. And it built some change, and it meant that people came to us to almost ask for the change rather than us forcing change on people. So that was really beneficial for us.
I think lots of people in the audience are probably approaching a similar sort of methodology on how do we think of data products and how do you actually align by domain across the business to be able to deliver and create that fear of missing out, right? Or that internal competition. I know when we did change management at Microsoft when I was there, that's exactly what we did, was try to capture those early business groups. I think, Alex, I know that we have partnered with you from Databricks perspective, and I partnered with you at ASDA when I was at Microsoft. Maybe you could share a little bit with the audience on how you didn't just focus on the technology. How did you think about the ecosystem as a whole as you looked to bring the different units and people along on the journey with you?
It's one of those sort of very philosophical questions, and it is, people want this sort of magical answer, and the reality is you kind of have to figure it out as you go. And I think the thing that I would definitely say is, like, getting to common language is key, and I think, like, building on Miriam's point a bit, is like, be really clear on your objective. Like, we were very clear that, like, the first thing that we were doing was changing all the tools, which then in turn has a bunch of kind of requirements and needs, and kind of what do you do about that. And I think it was getting partnership in, and whether that partnership is with the consumers of the end result, whether that partnership is actually the change delivery teams, or it could be our vendors, and as you say, Databricks have been very helpful and helped on that acceleration journey. I think probably one of my sort of key takeaways really is that people forget about the KPIs and the data to actually measure the transformation. And I think that is far more important than figuring out what your operational KPIs are at your end state. So it's looking at what is the impact of, in our case, we would convert the stores, say, so each store would move into a new set of technology, and what is interacted with in the business is completely different to both the employees and the staff and the customers who are interacting with our offering. And initially, we didn't focus on, has it gone well? I think what we started to do over time was look at, well, let's look at the comparators, almost doing like A/B testing, but not in a kind of a model for, like, we're all used to looking at it from is my linear regression model got the right features in it? But we started to do take the same approach with our actual physical conversions, and it drove different decisions, and we stopped following a fixed plan and started following a data-driven plan and made different decisions, and how you do store clustering or which depots you do, and I think that was probably the best bit of value we've delivered.
I find that so fascinating because, right, as you talked about, like, how do you start to think about it compared to the old world of software engineering and sort of measuring that A/B testing versus today when we think about transformation. Can't tell you how many organizations view transformation as a singular project that has a finish date where you will be completed. If you think about where ASDA is now, Miriam, like how do you think about that? Do you think the transformation is done for ASDA as you look at that?
Absolutely not. I think it's just we're almost in a place where we're on the beginning of now another exciting journey. So we've done a lot of transformation. We've seen a lot of change. We've seen a lot of systems change. We've seen a lot of our data change, and that has been a huge learning curve, not only for us as a data team. It's also been for our end users. They've had to have a lot of change as well. And now it's the beginning of sort of almost like a new journey, which is very, very interesting. One of the things that we have done to really, I think, probably drive it forward to help us be more effective with our end users and our actual internal customers is we started to align ourselves to the value streams of the organization, which is really, really beneficial. So, one of a previous way of working is teams would just be allocated to things as they came up. We'd have a project here and a project there, and you'd pop a team to a project, and they'd move on to another project. What we're doing now is we basically align our teams to those business functions. So we're bringing our data expertise. We've built that up. We have data expertise, but now our colleagues are becoming sort of functional experts as well. So we are really starting to business partner with our customers, and we're working together. We're exploring the new data together, but we're also thinking together how we can use that to actually drive forward improvements in the business. And that's because we see the data at the same time and together with our end users, so we can really collaborate. And I think we're not there yet, we haven't done that yet, but we're just building the relationships that are actually going to bring some really exciting work for us as we move forward.
So I love the point that you're not trying to solve all things for all people at the same time, and how do we make sure that you're creating almost that flywheel of transformation. So despite the fact that the separation from Walmart has now occurred and that's completed, it isn't an all or nothing. You can truly drive value today and how you measure that. I think, Alex, how are you thinking about it when you now look at all the great work that Miriam and the teams have put together and how they're driving real value together with the business? What do you think the future looks like?
I think it's a hard question, and I think the probably the biggest kind of asset is the fact that you are now masters of your own destiny. So, like the transformation in inverted commas is done. Like, we've separated the technology systems, but that is almost where the journey starts. And I think from what does the future look like? I think the organisation is data hungry, and in every area of the business, whether it's AI cameras or starting to use agents, etc. There's sort of these threads, and I think what we are focusing on at a sort of thematic level is actually how do you start accelerating democratization, and looking at to the work that Miriam was talking about is we've built that I suppose what you'd call hub and spoke model in a data mesh nomenclature. That sort of business partnering kind of relationship is the catalyst for change. And now we're saying, well, how do you go bigger? How do you go faster? How do you make sure that you can self-serve what I would class as descriptive analytics to free up more of the kind of data professionals to then take the next step and say, how do you get to predictive? How do we get to prescriptive? How do we get to cognitive analytics? And it's that kind of acceleration through that journey of enable people and using great tools like Databricks has got some wonderful features in there to help with that. But then looking at like how do you do the next step, and whilst also keeping a bit of an eye on AI as a disruptor and etc. So I think the world's our oyster is probably the sort of a bridge version, but it's interesting and exciting time. I think.
So Miriam, from your perspective, I mean, your team is now distributed across by domain, and they're now getting that great domain level of expertise where they can do that translation between data. I talk to organizations and CEOs and boards all the time about, give me AI now, how are we going to democratize it? How are we going to enable everybody across the organization? So how are you thinking about this sort of data product, domain sort of centric approach as you look for what's next for your team to be able to provide that?
So I think it's really interesting because one of the things we're doing is we're helping the business understand what a data product is, almost at the same time as we're doing it ourselves, because it's quite new, the world of data products. We're learning it, but so are our business customers as well, and our end users, and it's kind of one of the really interesting things is helping them understand their own domain, but also the value they can bring to some of the cross-functional domains as well. So it's really getting deep into that data. I think to Alex's point of us being almost like we are now masters of our own destiny. We actually own our own, we own our own data, we transform our own data. That's really, that is possibly a thing for us, but it's really interesting that we get it raw now. We can see what we can do with it, and that is opening up a lot of new possibilities for us, but we are taking it one step at a time, because until we've got all of that foundational knowledge, I don't know that we'd make a lot of sense for any AI. we could be a bit too disruptive. So it's really sort of building that knowledge and learning together, which is really interesting, but also, I think we have to be very measured and very kind of like intentional about what we learn and what we do with that as well.
So are you still creating sort of that culture of almost competition between, you talked about getting those early champions, do you still continue to see that community-driven, organizational-driven sort of pressure on the systems and processes and tools, et cetera, that you're building up for the ecosystem?
It is, I think that the different areas of the business kind of are operating at different speeds now. Yep. I think that the competition element came a bit more from everyone knew they needed to achieve something quickly, and when you start to see success, then others want to replicate it. So we started with some of our commercial teams, for example, and then they started to deliver results and perform better and understand what was going on, and so then our e-commerce team say, oh, I'd like a slice of that pie, please. And then kind of once you keep going through the business, there's a sort of tipping point, which is then the conversation is, well, everybody else is doing it, why aren't you? And so I think, is the sort of competition still there? I think to a certain extent, but there's almost the momentum's, it becomes a bit of a flywheel effect that kind of you can almost take out that competition element once you've got momentum. And it's okay for different areas to go at different paces. And we find that, I suppose, the digital capabilities are probably quicker to want to evolve, whereas some of the more classic kind of physical items might be slightly slower. But that is, we think that is okay, and is a kind of part of the journey and the growth of how do we evolve as an organization.
I find that so interesting, because I think lots of organizations often view it as an all or nothing, like you have to get the entire organization on board or not, especially when you're trying to present to the overall strategy, the transformation, what's happened. I think a great lesson is, regardless of size of organization that I've worked with, there is always that different levels of maturity across different domains across the business, and that's okay, right? And especially, I think, as we think about AI and what that next iteration or that next generation of your transformation looks like, I think we're now all relearning. First it was data literacy or data enablement, and now we're talking AI or agentic enablement as what's sort of coming on the future. Miriam, how do you think about like your culture and building sort of out that community and continuing that sort of drive?
Yeah, it's also a really exciting opportunity for us, I think, because there's that culture. I think where we're at now is we've got a few things to do, which I'm sure most people do. As you go through transformation, most people they're all going through their own change curves, but particularly with the data one, we had data teams, we had MI teams, we had just, Walmart was a very self-service kind of organisation, so people who had their hands on the data, all of a sudden it's all changed. So there's quite a big dip in trust in data and kind of like a nervousness and anxiety about using data. That one of the things we are building up is trust in data again. You know, everything from kind of bringing in data quality checks, data governance tooling and data governance advice and things like that, just to getting people used to new tooling. So that is very much something that we are doing hand in hand with our kind of business stakeholders as well. And it comes back to that kind of co-location, being open and being really accessible, but also therefore using those skills to sort of be there and be helpful, build up some SMEs as well. So you will always find somebody in any business team who's got a bit more of an interest in data than maybe the rest of the team, and almost kind of building up good relationships with those people and using them to kind of be a catalyst for change as well and bring that culture. But one of the things that we're trying to do as well is we do really some things that might seem simple to some people who probably have data maturity in their organisation, but we host a monthly showcase, for example. It's quite simple, but we bring the organisation together and we talk to them about what we've done, we talk to them about what we've delivered, and that's really helpful, not only because it shows progress, it builds back that trust, but also generates a bit of excitement, a bit of cross-functional excitement as well, of those people have got that data now, and if I joined that to my data, what could I do with it? So it just brings that excitement and that kind of, it's quite good coming out of a big transformation program when people feel like they've maybe kind of gone back a step in what they've had accessible to them, to really start to get them excited about what they do have now, which in some cases it might feel like the same data, but when you talk to them about it, you might have more detail than you had before, or it might come quicker or differently. So it's those little things, I think, are really kind of helping bring a culture where people go to data for answers instead of maybe just for sort of comfort of reporting or a KPI or anything like that.
Yeah. And I love how you're rethinking processes as well, right? Because it's not, it is all about the people and about you create the right technology and tools for them to do it, but how do you help them rethink or reimagine sort of processes? I'm going to let the audience ask questions, but before that, maybe I'll ask each of you to share, now that you see where you are in sort of your transformation journey and all of the great successes that you've had, what would be one piece of advice that you would give the audience who might be a little earlier in on the journey that you wish you had known earlier on in the process? So I'll let each of you answer that, and then we have a mic that we can take some audience questions. So Alex, let's start with you. I'll put you on the point first.
What is it? I don't know if I can pick one. I think the starter is people, like people are the key. I think, as I said before, I think don't underestimate the value of measuring the transformation. Yeah. And the final one is probably just be clear on what you're trying to achieve and do it incrementally.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think probably for me, a couple of things, mainly going back to that point on focus. I think sometimes it's easy to forget how big transformation can be and how impactful it can be to people. Sort of thinking about that in terms of what you set out to deliver is sometimes something smaller, and then getting a little bit more than you wanted is possibly better for everybody than kind of going, yeah, we can give you everything that you ever had in X amount of time, because that always sometimes, you set yourself up for a bit of a difficult time then as well. And I think one of the things that I think has really helped us as a data team as we've moved through the journey is we've been very transparent, and that has really helped. And I think we fell into a bit of a trap of not wanting to talk to anybody about what we'd done until it was absolutely perfect. And just that openness, sort of one of the big steps we made, which was quite scary for a lot of our teams, is when the teams have a stand-up, bring the stakeholder to the stand-up, and it kind of causes sort of panic about what if they see that something's going wrong. But it's okay, because we talk to them every day, so we're not just telling them something's wrong and then going away. So that transparency is so helpful, because you go on the journey together.
I love that. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up to the audience to see if there's any questions. So we have one right here in the front row. That's not on. We can't hear you. Why don't you yell at me and I'll say it out loud?
Hi, this is to Mariam. Simple question. What is your definition of data product?
Oh,
Because
God.
that's a very, very, I mean, everybody has a different answer. So you just want to understand your thoughts.
Oh gosh, that's so hard. I feel like I'm in an interview. so intent, I mean, basically we class a data product as pretty much anything that adds value to the end user that involves data. So that can be anything from, it can just be a data ingestion that gives somebody who is maybe interested in kind of exploratory analysis, just bring some data in and give it to them. It can be a report, it can be a data feed from one system to another perhaps, it can be an algorithm. So our data product is very broad in terms of what it could be, but the key thing is it's bringing value to an end user, and it's bringing continual value to an end user, and we can build on it.
And to you, Alex, how did you go about building trust in the data from the end user perspective, and what mechanism are you using to discover the data? Because I believe you have data in different silos in different places, right?
Yes, great question. I think actually on reflection, I think this might be my answer to the what is your biggest recommendation is, especially with technology system change, like data quality is probably the most important thing. And I think where we have found the best value is cross-system reconciliation. And so if I take a relatively simple example, which is if you take sales, and let's just take a store. So customers come in and they buy things. That then, once that happens, the data flows all around the business, and there is opportunity for those systems to have defects or logic problems. We built sets of reconciliation information that we broadcast to all of the technology team and the business, and you could see, well, if you look at our POS, like our tills, does it match our financial accounting system? And it was like that is got a huge amount of tangibility and traction, and has actually probably sped up the program by a significant amount. I think the other is kind of falling more into how do we start building data quality checks, and again, I am a firm believer that partnering and relationships are the key to most of the world's problems. And so our data governance works in the same way. We build some dashboards, we go and sit with the teams, and Miriam's team will partner with that, and so we will go and sit with our commercial team and say, here's your products, you've got 100,000 products on sale, does that feel right? Or here's the price, here's your margin, there are some products that have got a margin of 200, 300, 400%, is that right? And it's that tangibility, but I think it's just being present and talking and things, but data quality has been a challenge. And probably it's a sort of education piece on how do you get your data owners and your data stewards to really understand it, and then be able to take action off the back of it.
I bet you were going to hope that he said he solved all things data quality, that you were now going to be able to just lift and shift. But we have time for maybe one more question, and then, yeah, perfect.
Thanks. Excellent talk. It's weird hearing my own voice. I was just wondering what you guys have done in this transformational journey to drive buy-in from customer-facing colleagues in store that are maybe not non-technical or not data-facing, that don't have direct access to you and your teams.
Maybe we'll let Miriam answer that, and then we'll run.
I think, again, slightly boring answer, but a lot of it is build a relationship and listen to what people need. So some of the hardest thing, one of the things we found is store, particularly for store managers or operational colleagues, they are quite often targeted on a KPI and nobody's ever sat down and told them why or what it is or anything like that. So but some of the feedback you have is you feel like you've been really clear, and then you've got somebody who's operational go, but I've been in 8 meetings with you, Miriam, and I still don't understand what you're talking about. So it's about, the thing is, think about what their problem is first, rather than think about what we need to give them, and really listen to them about the problems that they have to solve. Really simple things, like, you know, if you're walking around a shop every day, you probably actually don't want to have an iPad. You want to print it out and just take it with you. And simple things like that are very meaningful to somebody who's on the receiving end of complex data, and they can get you a lot of trust, and they can get you a long way in terms of buy-in and goodwill when you're trying to work with them to get them to actually use that data and adopt it.
I love that. The data team living the world of the people across the organization.
We will go into stores.
Yeah.
We just go and sit with the store managers, or we'll go into depots. I haven't yet sat with a person driving a truck around, but maybe that's next on the list. But it's like, because you get as much out of it
Absolutely.
as the consumers. The amount that you learn from going and picking, like being stocking shelves, is amazing. It is really eye-opening. It's very easy to focus on all of the numbers and the data that flows without actually having the tangibility.
Well, we're all super excited to continue to see the transformation of ASDA. I know we will all continue to shop at ASDA and enjoy the value and benefit of that transformation. Please join me in thanking both Alex and Miriam for sharing their story with us.